Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? And I hope everybody had some happy holidays. Okay, we start the new year. What does the new year bring? Is this like last year was the lost year? Is this the last year? Question I posed last week. Something to think about. The United States is the biggest empire on earth. If the U.S. economy happens to falter, fall to pieces, disintegrate completely, that's it for humanity. There won't be another empire. There won't be a Chinese empire. There won't be a Russian empire. This is no longer like in the days of the Greeks and Persians. When the Persians went down, the Greeks came up. That's never going to happen again. We're just going to end up with one empire, and that's the United States. So let's hope we prop up the United States and it doesn't fall. Okay? We'll see what happens this year. It doesn't look good for now. It's pretty bad. Um, some people asked about Hans, my son. He was here the other day on the air. And we consider that, talk to him, and what we're going to be doing is probably once a month or every so often, he's going to come on the air and we're going to have the same type of presentation, debate, discussion, and open up the floor for questions. So we're probably going to do that more often. Okay. And what I'm going to talk about today is technology. Is technology the same thing as science? Is science the same thing as technology? Is physics the same thing as philosophy? Is philosophy the same thing as physics? And it used to be called, what is it, 17th, 18th century, probably 19th as well, natural philosophy. Physics, astronomy, that sort of thing. That fell under what they called natural philosophy, including medicine. And is that what philosophy is? Philosophy is about physics. Physics is the same thing as philosophy. And that comes all the way from Aristotle. They had this mixture in there. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to see if those are compatible. Physics with philosophy and technology with physics or with science. Okay, in order to get started here, I'm going to start out with the first 10 years of the Nobel Prizes. That's a good place to start. Turns out that the Nobel Prizes were instituted in 1901. That's when the first one went out. And I'm going to look at the first 10. I'm going to look at the 6 of those, okay, just to make my point today. Okay, here's the first one. We have Mr. Röntgen. Discovery of the remarkable rays subsequently named after him. Here in Germany, they call them Röntgen rays. Everybody else, they call them X-rays. Okay, that was in 1901. 1903, most people know the Curies. I don't know how many know Becquerel, but discovery of radioactivity. 1904, they discovered argon. 1907, we had Michelson, from Michelson-Morley experiment in the 19th century. He developed optical instruments, primarily the interferometer, and what to measure the speed of light. Okay, he improved on that over time. Spent the whole life doing that. 1908, method of reproducing colors photographically based on interference. Okay, so this fellow Lippmann, he came up with a method. Okay, and 1909 we have Marconi, famous Marconi. Nobody knows the other guy, Brown, but for development of wireless telegraphy. Is any of this related to physics? Any of them? I mean, what is physics about? Is physics about discovering? And here I'm talking about the following. Imagine there's a magician on stage, okay? And he does a magic trick and everybody wonders, oh, how did he do that? And you start thinking, reason, you try to say, well, how about this and that, you look at other different possibilities, and it turns out that through your reasoning process, you discover how the magician did the trick. Well, that sort of discovery is okay because you burn some gray matter up there, some calories, right, in your attic. But what if you go to the jungle and you're the first man to discover, I don't know, a rhinoceros? Nobody has ever seen a rhinoceros. You're the first one to discover a rhinoceros. You bumped into him or he chased you through the jungle. Do you deserve a Nobel for that? For being the first one to discover rhinoceros? Just bumped into it? And the reason I'm raising that issue is here, if I can get it up here, you have cases like Röntgen and Penzias and Wilson. You know, they discovered their stuff accidentally. Röntgen, the rays, you know, he just bumped against them, like you against the rhinoceros. Or Penzias and Wilson, you know, they went in there and they discovered the so-called background radiation, cosmic background radiation. And they didn't know what they had discovered. And it was another group that said, oh, you discovered what we were looking for. Oh, okay. And they gave them a Nobel. It's like, you know, did they deserve the Nobel because they stumbled upon something that they had no clue about? This is like the rhinoceros again. It's not like the guy who tries to figure out something about, you know, how the magician did the trick. And so they're giving Nobel Prizes for discoveries that are just bumping against, stumbling, you know, upon something. Is that worth a Nobel? Is that what physics is about? Just stumbling upon something? Is physics spending your life measuring the speed of light with ever more precision or accuracy, like all these fellows did? I mean, Galileo thought light was instantaneous when he did his lamp experiment from two mountains. He opened up his lamp, his assistant on the other mountain had to open up immediately after he did his, as soon as he saw the light. And they did it several times. They said, no, light is instantaneous. And it was Römer who figured out, you know, because of he was looking at Jupiter and one of the moons, and he was expecting it at a given time, and it came in a little later. And he says, well, the reason I saw it a little later is because the light took time to reach my eyes. And so he figured out that the speed of light was finite from that. He reasoned that out. And from he more or less calculated it. In fact, I think it was more fellow from Holland. What's his name? Lost his name now for a second. Who calculated the speed of light. More or less, I think he was like 10% off. And then Huygens, that's the name I was thinking of. And then you have Bradley. He came up with parallax a couple decades later. And he figured out the speed of light a little more accurately. Fizeau and Foucault in the 19th century, they did it with vacuum and water also. And finally, he ended up with Michelson and Morley. Michelson then spent the rest of his life, more or less, the next 20 years, just improving on his interferometer to measure the speed of light ever more accurately. This is like, you know, here you have a table. And I ask you, what is the size of that table? How long is it? And you say, well, it's a meter. But I used a ruler to do that. And then you invent more accurate methods of measuring your table. And you say, no, it's a meter in a millimeter. And then you measure more and you say, it's a millimeter, 1 meter, 1 millimeter, and 1 centimeter. Is that science, measuring your table ever more accurately? Is that what physics is about? Because that's what Michelson got his Nobel for measuring the speed of light ever more accurately. He had no idea what he was measuring. In other words, he didn't know what light was. So he's assuming, you know, that He's got the speed probably of a ball. That's probably what was going through his mind. Something going from A to B. And if light is what I say it is, a torsion of a rope, well, he wasted his time. Because first you need to know if it's an eagle or a turtle that's invisible out there, that you're pondering, that you're studying. An invisible eagle or an invisible turtle, and which one is it? And if you do all your calculations, all your measurements on the turtle, and it turns out to be an eagle, well, you could be wasting your time. That's the issue. And then the question is physics also about inventing or developing gadgets? Subject of today, technology. Here you had some people here. Let's put them back here. You got Marconi. He invented the telegraph, or at least was involved in that. They had all kinds of claims, patent claims, a lot of trials and so on. Is that what physics is about? Inventing a gadget. Is this technology? If you invent something, is that what physics is about? And let me give you here, for instance, here are some inventions. Okay, you have Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison with his light bulb, the filament, especially Bell with his telephone, and apparently some people complain, say he stole it from Meucci, an Italian who apparently preceded him and discovered it first. You have the Wright brothers. They invented the airplane. Should all these people get Nobel Prizes? I mean, you could say, well, for example, in the case of Wilbur Wright, he died in 1912. Maybe they didn't have time to give him a Nobel because you can only give it to someone who's alive. And by the time they probably wanted to give it to Wilbur Wright, well, he was dead. Well, how about all the others? I mean, Orville Wright lasted till 1948. They had 48 years to give him a Nobel for inventing the airplane or developing the airplane, different parts of it, different patents that he had. Thomas Edison, he got the first light bulb, in other words, the first filament. Why didn't he get a Nobel? And Bell with his phone and so on. The question here is, why didn't these people get Nobel Prizes? If physics is about inventing gadgets. I mean, I think the airplane is a pretty interesting invention, It deserves, that you take your hat off. And these guys broke their brains and they did a lot of experiments and so on to test, the wings and the flight and different parts of the airplane, and eventually got a motor on it and they flew. I mean, I think that deserves some recognition. And it turns out that, none of these people were ever considered for the Nobel Prize, as far as I know. And I think they provided more to physics. If we're going to talk about, if physics is about gadgets, I think they provided more to physics than Einstein or Niels Bohr. What did they provide? Misunderstanding. I mean, in the case of Bohr, the little bead going around the atom. Is that what the atom is? Even to this day, we don't have an idea what the atom looks like in quantum. We do in rational science, but in quantum they have no clue. They cannot justify their atom. And that's Niels Bohr. That's what Niels Bohr got his Nobel Prize for saying, you got this bead that goes around the atom. That's what they developed with Rutherford. So, if I were to put them on the balance, I would give the Nobel Prize instead to the Wright brothers or to Graham Bell rather than to Einstein and Bohr. So again, is physics about inventing gadgets, developing gadgets, technology? One of the things you got to keep in mind tonight. So what is the subject matter of physics? Okay, as physics, the same thing, for example, as philosophy. And again, you have people who think that physics is equal to natural philosophy, which is what Newton is. People in Newton's day thought about physics as natural philosophy. That's what they called it because it was the tradition that came from the Greeks. Is that what physics is? Natural philosophy? To get, in other words, is it some kind of philosophy? Is that all that physics is? And yeah, the only way we can zero in on these things is defining these terms so that we know what we're talking about. Otherwise, we can say anything. We can say, yeah, it's natural philosophy. Well, all you said is that it's X. Until you define X, we don't know what you said. Okay, so that's my point here. Okay, so one of the questions I have is, what is philosophy? Okay, put good old Ain on this side. Is philosophy your opinions and beliefs? Your way of thinking? I had a talk with my son Hans, in fact, on this issue because he likes philosophy. I don't get involved with philosophy, but he does, and so we have differences of opinion on philosophy. He follows this fellow Jordan Peterson, which I say, for the most part, just like Ayn Rand, they're not philosophers, or Ayn Rand wasn't a philosopher. Why? Because essentially they had this notion that anybody's way of thinking is philosophy. It's your philosophy. No, that's not philosophy, because that notion of philosophy has no purpose, and 99% of it is opinion, belief. That's called religion, not philosophy. Okay, when you have a belief, when you have an opinion, when you give a recommendation to someone on how to live, and this is the best thing for you, and this is the best form of government, and so on, all that is religion. It's opinion, it's belief. Recommendations, that's got nothing to do with science. And the question is, what is the purpose of philosophy if it's just a recommendation? It's your opinion against my opinion. It's like your religion against mine. I'm Muslim and you're Christian or Buddhist or whatever. And so I have my opinions about, who's the rightful representative of God, and you have yours. What is that? That's called religion. So, and that's what Ayn Rand did. She did a lot of opinion. She told you how you should live, how government should be run. That's why she was not a philosopher for the most part. Maybe among all the rubble in the pile of rubble, you could find a little bit of philosophy in there, meaning what I call philosophy, which is explaining behavior. Okay, a branch of what we call philosophy today, which is so broad that it's meaningless. It's like God, what is God? Well, God is everything. Well, if God is everything, God is also nothing, I guess. It includes nothing because nothing is part of everything. So God is meaningless. You gotta restrict God to something so that you can talk intelligently about God. If God is everything, what are we talking about? And the same thing with philosophy. If philosophy is everything, if any way of thinking is philosophy, then what the hell is philosophy? What is it for? What do we use this thing for? Apparently we're not talking about philosophy, we're talking about religion. In order for philosophy to be meaningful and to have some bearing on anything, it's got to be objective in some way. And that's an objective explanation of something, explanation of a behavior. Why did Napoleon go to Waterloo? Well, this one has one theory. He said, well, he wanted to be famous. The other guy might say, well, no, I've got a different theory. I think he was escaping from his wife. They can have different theories. The theory itself is objective. Whether you believe in it or not is your religion. But the theory, the explanation he gives is objective, and that you can call philosophy. You can say, psychiatry or psychology, why did someone commit suicide? And the guy has an explanation for why. He said, well, he was depressed and he had all these problems. He was taking too many drugs. That's the explanation is objective. Whether you believe that that's why he committed suicide, that's a different story. But the explanation is objective. And you can say that's philosophy because now you're explaining something with it. It has some purpose, it has some usefulness. But to say that it's my opinion against your opinion, that's not philosophy. That's religion. It's outside of science. Science should be objective, and in that case, if philosophy is to serve any purpose, it's got to be a branch of science, and not the mother of science, of all sciences, but a branch, one of the legs of science, together with the other leg being physics. So is philosophy about making recommendations on how to live? Politics, is that philosophy? How we should run the country, or how you should behave? Versus why you did something, an explanation of why you did something. This is different. How you should behave is a recommendation. Behave like this and you'll be okay. That's your opinion. Philosophy, the mother of all sciences? No, it's the other way around. Science is above physics and philosophy. And it turns out no one in the last 10,000 years defined what philosophy is in a meaningful way, and something we use consistently and that everybody understands, that everybody's on the same page. We don't have that today. In fact, here you have good old Ayn Rand. And I talked about her in the past a little bit. And, I say that she was not a philosopher. People, they want to scratch my face. What do you mean she wasn't a philosopher? Of course she was a philosopher. Was she? I mean, once we define philosophy in a crisp, rigorous way, maybe she falls outside of philosophy. She was doing stuff that branched off into physics. Physics deals with two things primarily, two words that belong exclusively to physics. One is the word object, and the other one is the word exist. Physics is the science of objects. Physics is the science of existence. You can't do physics without objects, and physics only studies that which exists, objects that exist. That's the realm of physics. And she tried to do that. She called it entity. She used the word something here and there. She used the word thing here and there. Her favorite word was entity, but she never defined it properly. She called her so-called philosophy objectivism, and it was about 150% subjectivism, nothing objective about it whatsoever. And here's a case in point. Here's her definitions or her notions of entity, what a thing is. She said, has to be defined ostensively. Okay, how do you define it? That is to say, by pointing. If she would have stopped there, that wouldn't have been so bad. An object is that which you can point to. But she says an entity is a this which you can point to, and when she put that and, she screwed it up completely. She showed that she had no clue whatsoever here. Grasped by human perception. That's called subjectivism. Because now you're introducing the observer. You're saying that's whatever he perceives. Okay, so he says grasped by human perception. So if you can't grasp by human perception whether a magnet has a magnetic field, then the magnetic field is not, or whatever's in there in that region, is not a physical object, not an object. And you say, well, let's sprinkle some iron filings, and we can see if there's something there, perception, right? No. I have a single piece of metal out there in the universe. That's the only object that God made, or the devil, or whoever. And it's a magnet. Unless you sprinkle iron filings, as far as you're concerned, that's only a piece of metal. You don't see or detect in any way the magnetic field. And yet this magnetic field has the potential, right, to move things around, charges, as they say, or iron filings or whatever. So there's something there, but you don't see it, you don't detect it, because unless you throw the iron filings on top of that, you will never detect the magnetic field. As far as you're concerned, that's just a piece of iron just sitting there. So no, you do not have perception of certain things that are there, which are physical objects. Okay, because if you don't put a physical object there, you're putting spirits in that same space. Okay, she said entity means self-sufficient form of existence. Again, like everybody else, she confused entity with existence. She thought that an object, like human can't. Both of those guys also said, there's no difference between an object and an object that exists. In other words, existence. And she had the same problem. She never figured it out. Okay, so people who vouch for Ayn Rand are fanatic about her. They should learn that Ayn Rand did not figure it out. And some people have the argument, they say, well, she did it for philosophy. The word existence, the word object belong exclusively to physics. We can't put them in philosophy. Philosophy doesn't deal with existence at all. It's this problem that has come from the Greeks that created this situation. That people confuse philosophy with physics, and they have this thing called ontology and metaphysics. No, all that nonsense. We don't need any of that. We have black and white. It's got to be black and white. Can't be any gray. You can't have the word existence be half in philosophy and half in physics, or the word object be half and half. The word object and existence belong exclusively to physics. Anyone using the word philosophy, object, or the word existence has crossed the line into physics. They went from black to white, or vice versa, whatever. Those words belong exclusively to physics. And she was doing physics whether she knew it or not. And she did a lousy job of that, because she says, again, entities are what is given in sense perception. No, absolutely not. Has nothing to do with our senses. And solid things which we can directly perceive. Okay, so she identified things, entity, whatever, with things that you can perceive, touch, see. And then she ended up, an entity is a solid thing open to human perception and capable of independent action. Again, she introduced motion into her object. She tried to cover all the bases. Touch, see, motion, mass, the whole thing, so an object is all of these things. Okay, so is Superman, the little drawing, is that an object? See, she forgot about shape. And then she ended up, obviously, with an irrational conclusion. See, fluids are not entities. She didn't think that water or air, for that matter, were entities or things. Even though, you can grasp by the human perception. I mean, I can grasp air by the human perception, the perception of touch. So she's got a contradiction. On the one hand, she says, use perception to determine if a table is an object. Okay, I touched the table. Now I touch air. Oh, no, that's not an object because it's fluid or gas or whatever. So no, she had no clue whatsoever. And people who vouch for her don't understand the fine points of the argument. Okay, so you got to grasp the fine points before you become a fanatic of Ayn Rand. Means there's something you're missing. Okay, and I'm going to attack Ayn Rand to my death because she had no clue. And here, she made it even worse when she dealt with the word exist. And again, it's because she thought she was a philosopher and in the tradition of Aristotle. And Aristotle was not a philosopher, okay? Because Aristotle made the same error all these people did. He mixed physics with philosophy. He mixed things and existence which belong to physics exclusively with opinions, thinking about things. Your opinion, your philosophy, your way of thinking. And she said, to exist is to be something. No. Don't stop there. See, she put a comma there. No. As distinguished from the nothing of non-existence. What did she say there? All she said is, existence is something and non-existence is nothing. So what does all that mean? Reality is which that exists. Well, reality is a synonym of exist. It had better be. So she said nothing there as well. The unreal does not exist. No kidding. Again, she's just using synonyms upon synonyms upon synonyms. The unreal is merely the negation of existence. So she said absolutely nothing so far. She said nonsense. Poetry, just word wizardry. A is A. No kidding. A thing is itself. No kidding. What is all this nonsense? What does this have to do with anything? All she's saying is A, B is B, C is C. No kidding. Existence is identity. What does that mean? Consciousness is identification. To exist is to possess identity. Oh, this is just word wizardry, just running around in circles. She said absolutely nothing so far. She had no clue what exist means or stands for. And she said, existence exists. No, existence does not exist because existence is a concept and concepts do not exist. Not in physics, not in science. Okay, that statement implies two corollary axioms. Something exists which one perceives. Absolutely not. There are things that exist that one does not perceive. Certainly a star on the other side of the universe exists, and I do not perceive it in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and she's introducing observers, meaning she's not going to be doing objectivism, as she called it. She's doing subjectivism. One exists possessing consciousness. Okay, no. One exists if he's got location, not if he possesses consciousness. Consciousness being the faculty of perceiving that which exists. So again, she's doing poetry. That's all she did. She was not a philosopher. And certainly she did not define the word exist or the word object, in other words, entity, in a rational manner. Never. And those were the foundations for her entire philosophy. In other words, what was her philosophy? Recommendations on how people should live. Altruism and how government should run and what the individual should do. Shoulds. That's not philosophy. Again, it's this notion that 99% of the people, more, I'd say close to 100% of the people out there have that philosophy it's just your way of thinking. It's a way of thinking. No, that's no good. We can't do anything with that. Everybody's got a way of thinking. It's known as religion. A way of thinking, a belief, an opinion, a recommendation on how to live, the shoulds, all that is religion. It's got nothing to do with philosophy. Philosophy is explaining something. That's where you have to use your brain, because now you have to reason something out. But to say, I believe the government should be run this way, and I believe Joey should be doing this so he has a better life, that's not philosophy. That's religion. Okay? And that's the problem. We've had 10,000 years of religion and no philosophy whatsoever. Likewise with physics. No physics. All we had is religion so far. Okay, so how do we solve this? Well, we go and try to figure out what philosophy is. Let's see what the definitions are. Here we have a definition from the Wikipedia. It says, philosophy, the study of general and fundamental questions. Study of questions. Very vague, okay? Such as those about reason, existence, knowledge, values, mind, and language. They just put all jack of all trades in there, just threw it all in there, said philosophy is everything. You ask a question about anything, it's philosophy. So if I ask a question, how does this magnet attract this other magnet? That's a question, right? That's philosophy. Saying that, how does this happen? What is the mechanism? That's philosophy. If I let go of the pen, right? Falls to the floor, or to the table in this case. Again, repeatable experiment. You got to make it repeatable to be scientific, right? So we let go of the pen, and I ask, well, why does it fall to the ground? Is that philosophy? Or is that a question of physics? This is the issue. The issue is people are mixing philosophy with physics, and we have to separate that. We have to separate it from technology, from discovery, where you stumble upon something, and from philosophy, meaning your opinion, your way of thinking. That's not scientific. That's useless. That's called religion, all that. Okay? No, if philosophy is to serve a purpose, we have to be a little more careful with the definition of the word philosophy. And since no one defined it in the last 5,000 years, 10,000 years, what was it? Love of wisdom? Oh, great. That's great. Wisdom, like how to behave in society in order for you not to be hanged or be spat upon by your neighbors. That's a should. That's wisdom. Yeah, you got to be wise, know how to behave in society. But that's got nothing to do with philosophy. That's got to do with you better behave this way or you're going to be punished. Or you better run the government this way or you'll be overthrown. We don't have an explanation. All we have is a should, a recommendation, how to behave, how to run a government. That's different than saying, let me explain to you why someone did something. That's where you have to break your brain. Okay, or again, in the case of physics, why something happened. What caused the pen to fall to the floor? What caused one magnet to be attracted by another? That's where you have to break your brain. Say, okay, let's visualize this mechanism. And there better be something invisible, intangible, a physical object in there, because otherwise you're introducing spirits and black magic in that same space. Okay, because of these lousy definitions that we have for philosophy, you have all these number one colleges in the world, especially in the United States, Great Britain, China, Russia. And when you go to their philosophy department, you find a jack of all trades. You find a jumble of things in there. You find people doing ontology, otherwise epistemology, metaphysics, diversity studies, politics, religion. You got the whole works. And here's a more detailed breakdown of that. Okay, here you see it. Okay, you see metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, logic, philosophy of science, political philosophy, aesthetics, philosophy of language, philosophy of mind. What does ethics have to do with aesthetics? What does philosophy of language have to do with philosophy of science? It's all philosophy. It's all, this is the way I think. This is the way I see the world. This is my opinion. Is that what my belief? Is that what philosophy is all about? So no, you can't find a single department that just says this is what we do. Now you got philosophy is like a broad branch, and that's why people say, what's the mother of all sciences? Is it? Or is it the mother of all religions? Like, beliefs, opinions. Is that what philosophy is all about? So we have to distinguish. First we have to separate philosophy from physics, and then we have to put philosophy somewhere. Where are you going to put it? Are you going to put it under physics? Are you going to put it under science? Are you going to put it under religion? Where does philosophy fit in? And you won't find a place to put it in unless you define it very, very strictly, rigorously, crisply. What am I saying? I'm saying that, if you have all these branches of philosophy, and 99% of them are opinions, beliefs, those go to religion. Those are just opinions. That's what religion is, opinion, beliefs. You got to take out of that, you got to kind of sift out of that what is objective. And objective are the explanations. But I thought, explanations is science. Well, yeah, that means that philosophy falls under science, and it doesn't do physics because physics deals with objects and existence. What does philosophy deal with then? Well, it's got to be explanations of behavior, purpose, reason, why someone did something. Then you have a purpose for philosophy. And it is one of the branches of philosophy today. What I'm doing is cutting all the other stuff that we don't need. We don't need politics. We don't need, aesthetics, art, ethics. We don't need any of that because all those are opinions. That's what we're cutting out. We're just leaving the meat. And the meat is behavior, explanation of behavior. Only then does it fall within science. And you can use the word philosophy consistently. That's why I can say with this definition that Ayn Rand was not a philosopher. Neither was Aristotle, neither was Wittgenstein, neither was Russell. None of these people were philosophers. They were not philosophers because what they did was religion. They did opinions, beliefs. They gave you shoulds and recommendations. That's not philosophy. That's religion. Let's give it the right word. What is religion? Opinion, belief. And that's what all these people did. That's why they were not philosophers. Okay? We have to define the word philosophy if we're going to use it in any meaningful way, and that we're all on the same page. You may not like my definition, like my son doesn't like it. He said, why do we need to define philosophy very strictly, very rigidly? I said, because it's when people go on a tangent, because we have this broad category called philosophy. And so they say, well, you're defining it for physics, but we're defining it for philosophy. Now, what do you mean philosophy? Which one? Which branch? You mean for religion? That's what you're trying to protect your religion, so you say, well, that's philosophy. I'm defining the word entity or the word object or the word thing for the purposes of philosophy. I'm defining the word exist or existence for the purposes of philosophy. No, because that's when you start saying, well, then love exists. No, not in science. In physics, the word exists belongs exclusively to physics, and we can only use it for objects. So love does not exist in physics. Information does not exist in physics. Intelligence does not exist in physics. Only the table can exist in physics. The rock, the tree, those can exist in physics, not concepts. And so that's when people start saying, whoa, this attacks my religion. No kidding. Yeah, that's why, rational science attacks all these things that we've done wrong, irrationally, really, for the last 10,000 years. We're breaking with that tradition. Yeah. Okay, here we have the definition, okay, rational science. What is science? Rational explanations. Science does not have to do with descriptions, with discovery, with inventing gadgets, with philosophy. Well, it does with philosophy, but not the subject matter that we had until today in philosophy, which is aesthetics, ethics, politics, who knows what else thrown in there. No, science, rational explanations, very clear. Anyone who doesn't understand that definition, not that you agree with the definition, I'm talking about understanding the definition. If you have a different definition, it's very simple. Get in the ring, sword and shield, defend your definition. See if you can stand your ground. And if you can't stand your ground, well, you can continue believing in God or whatever you want to believe. It doesn't matter. But I mean, you haven't made your case. We can't have you bring the whole world on your page, on the same page as you, because we can't follow your presentation because you have not defined what science is. You have not been able to defend your definition of the word science. And likewise, physics, if it's part of science, what does it explain? Well, it's a rational explanation of what? Of mechanisms, of causes. Okay? And the object and existence are, the two words that belong exclusively to physics. Philosophy, what does that deal with? Well, it's also rational explanations of what? Of reasons and purpose, of behavior, why someone did something. That has some meaning. And again, what we've done is cut out all the extra stuff. We just left the meat in there, okay? Because today the word philosophy includes this. But it includes so much other garbage that we don't need in philosophy. That's what we're whittling out. We're just leaving the meat, which is behavior. That's all that philosophy deals with. You're doing psychology, psychiatry, you're explaining behavior, you're doing science. You're explaining history, why someone did something, or why this army went to another land to fight these other people. If you can explain the reason, the causes, the reasons and the purpose, then you're doing science. You're doing philosophy. It's one of the branches of philosophy. History, psychology, psychiatry, all that stuff belongs under philosophy. Explanations of behavior. Then it has meaning. Otherwise, if you're just giving an opinion on this is how you should live, this is a recommendation, this is how you should run government, you're not doing philosophy, you're doing religion, you're just giving your opinion. And we have 8 billion philosophers on earth. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's an expert on his own opinion. No kidding. Okay. So what is science? Well, here we have the foundations of physics, okay? And science is, rational explanations. Physics is one of the branch of sciences. And we start with the golden principle. Physics requires an object. You can't do physics without an object, okay? And these are the words you must define in order to do physics. There are other words, but this is the core. This is the foundation. These are the cornerstones of physics. Because you're going to explain what? You're going to explain causes and mechanisms. You're not going to do math. You're not going to invent gadgets. You're not going to do philosophy, meaning, aesthetics, ethics, all that stuff. You're not going to do any of that. Not in physics. In physics, you deal with objects. You deal with existence, what exists out there. You want to know how this universe is run. You want to know how Mother Nature does magnetism, how Father Universe does gravity, how the devil does the atom, what is it? Quantum jump. This is the subject matter of physics. Okay? And so for that, you need these words. You need to know what nothing is. You need to know what something is. You need to know what distance, location, what motion is, what exist means. These are the words of physics. They do not belong to philosophy. Anyone using these words has jumped into physics, maybe except the last one there, concept. But you don't. The only reason I put it there is that you want to separate objects from concepts. Objects, that which has shape. Concepts, what? Two objects. You need a relation between two objects. You need two objects to create a concept. You need to establish some kind of relation. That's a concept. Okay. And so these are the foundations of physics. Okay, straightforward. Some people have trouble only because it destroys their religion, not because they may not understand what they're seeing. It's that they don't agree with what they're seeing. And the remedy there is very simple. Come up with your words, get in the ring, fight for them. Tell me what an object is, tell me what exist means in the alternative. That's how simple it is. Okay? So here we have some conclusions, summary. Science, rational explanations, physics, rational explanations of mechanisms, and philosophy, rational explanations of behaviors. That's the science world. This other stuff has nothing to do with science. Okay? Mathematics is just a language. It's a language that we use to describe quantitatively. Just a language. It's just like Chinese is a language. Is Chinese the language of science? Is Chinese the language of physics? Is Chinese the language of philosophy? No. It's just a language. It's a medium. Mathematics is just a bunch of hieroglyphics that we've created to describe concepts, to describe motion, especially, behavior of objects. That's what mathematics is all about. Technology, it's got nothing to do with science at all. If we define it strictly, what is science? Rational explanation. What is technology? Inventing, developing gadgets by trial and error. What did Edison say? I have not failed. I have discovered or I have found 10,000 ways that don't work. He tried one thing right after another until he got it right. In fact, Tesla made fun of him and says, if Edison had to find a needle in a haystack, Edison would have saved 90% of his time if he would have just thought and said, well, let's see, do some calculations in his head and reason it out. He would have shortened his time to find a needle. Instead, he said what Edison would do would take one straw at a time until he found the needle. And yeah, Edison was not a smart man. He was not, as far as technically smart. He was a businessman. That's all he was. He was wise as a businessman, but he was no good as a scientist. In fact, he had no formal training, whereas Tesla did have formal training. And Tesla worked for Edison until he went to work for Westinghouse, and then they sued each other. Everybody sued everybody in those days. They sued Marconi. The Wright brothers also sued everybody. All these people were suing for patents because they wanted to preserve the money, the value of what they had invented or discovered or whatever. Technology is not science. Religion, what is religion? Opinions, beliefs, shoulds, recommendations. That's what all these people, so-called philosophers, did. That's why they were not philosophers. They were religionists. Okay? We have to put it in the right context. And I know that destroys many people's religion. A lot of people are going to beat me up for that. But again, define philosophy. Define philosophy. Get in the ring. Defend your definition of philosophy. I defined it. You may not agree with my definition, but hopefully you understand it. Rational explanations of purpose and reason. I don't know what part you don't understand. So if you understand it, we're done. Whether you believe in that or not, or you agree with that, or you're skeptical about it, fine. Get in the ring and give me your definition so that we're all on the same page. Maybe you got a better definition than I do. Get in the ring, fight for your definition. No other recommendation than that. Okay, that's my philosophy. Okay, so let me give you a little homework, okay? I want you to look at this possibility because we're talking about technology here. Ideas, are they infinite, to use that word? Do we have an unlimited number of ideas, or are the ideas limited? Do we come to a point where we have no more ideas, that there's so many marbles in the bag and we take the last marble out and there are no more new ideas because all the ideas have been hacked out? That we've already come up with all the ideas possible. There's nothing new, no more music because we've used the 7 notes and all the rhythms we could think of in every possible combination. I mean, there's only 7 notes, right? And you can get all these octaves and you can get different rhythms. Once you cover all that, I mean, is it possible to cover all that? Or are there more ideas out there? Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to ponder, whether ideas are unlimited. And the first thing everybody says is, yeah, of course. You better think about it a little more. Okay, are ideas unlimited? I mean, we cannot invent the table, for example. We cannot think of a table again because the table was invented, I think, by the Neanderthals or someone out there, long time ago. Fire was already invented. We can't come up with that idea. It's already been there. And there are also abstract ideas such as, love and so on. We've already discovered or invented those, come across them. Are there more ideas? And then we keep branching off into, sub-ideas and sub-ideas and sub-ideas where we reach a point where there are no more marbles in the bag of ideas. Okay, that's the first issue. I want you to ponder that. Maybe you can give me an answer, someone out there next time. And here's the second part of that. Okay, if I can get this thing up there. Are inventions unlimited? Because one thing is an idea, you can talk about ideas going through the 4th dimension. Okay, fine. So you've got an idea that nobody thought about, traveling through the 4th or 5th dimension. Can we turn that into an invention? And you might say, well, no, but it's an idea. So it's an idea, but it can't be turned into an invention. So the invention's probably a subset of ideas. And the question is, are the number of inventions limited? I mean, how much can we invent? Forever? Just eternally keep inventing forever? And again, the first reaction from people is, yeah, inventions are unlimited. Well, it turns out that, they're not, because right now manufacturing is dying. It's becoming a smaller percentage of GDP in every country on the planet. In fact, worldwide. Why? Because we've invented essentially everything we need. I mean, you can say, well, instead of the red car, I'm going to invent the blue car. Yeah, but it's the car, it's a car, it's a car, it's a car. The fact that you change something cosmetic on it, can you call that really an invention? Or is that just, cosmetic or superficial or whatever you want to call it? Do we call that an invention because you painted your car blue instead of red? So when we're talking about inventions, I mean, something that maybe puts people to work, okay? Something that people can use out there and say, okay, now we have a new invention, a new gadget, something new that came out on the market. How many inventions can we come up with? And again, a lot of people like to answer to these questions, yeah, inventions, ideas are unlimited because they never thought about it. That's essentially it. They're not thinking in rational terms. They just, yeah, it's infinite, it's unlimited. I disagree. I think the ideas are limited, and much more limited are the inventions. And after we pull that last marble from the bag, there are no more inventions in the bag. That's my 10 cents worth, okay? And you can challenge me, and I know a lot of people will, but you better be ready to defend your position, okay? I'll slaughter you. Okay, let's go with some of the questions and comments that people made. And one fellow, he put a comment at the last moment, but I managed to include it today. And he said, look, there's this fellow says that engineering is religion. I like that because I was an engineer for many years. Okay, it says, and so I go to the site. He just referenced the site. So I went to the site, and this is what I pulled out, the first few paragraphs. Over the past few thousand years, engineering and science have become a religion of their own. Whoa, okay. Think of it this way. What does a religion have? Laws, tenets, prophets, creation, destruction, and usually theories of life and death. What do science and engineering lack that other religions have? In my opinion, nothing. Okay, we have Newton's laws, the theory of relativity, thermodynamics, aerodynamics, chemistry, physics, quantum mechanics, and too many more to list here. We have theories on how man was created. We have Darwin's theory, the Big Bang theory, the inevitable heat death of the universe, a quiet apocalypse, he misspelled it, evolution, and DNA. Our theories on life and death can be summed up with three things: conservation of mass, conservation of energy, and E equals mc squared. Well, see, this is the problem when you don't define what science is, what physics is, what philosophy is. Then you have this mumble jumble there, and people don't make any sense out of it and say, yeah, it's all religion. Engineering is religion. Physics is religion. Because we've never drawn the lines in a crisp way. None of this is physics. Conservation of mass, nothing to do with physics. Conservation of energy, nothing to do with physics. E equals mc squared, nothing at all to do with physics. Physics is explain to me why this magnet attracts that magnet. What's the physical mechanism? That's physics. This is not philosophy. This is called physics. Why a pen falls to the floor? Physics. How does the atom work? Give me a mechanism. What is this quantum jump that creates this so-called energy that is really light that flies outwards? Explain the mechanism. That's physics, not philosophy. And so, yeah, if you have the wrong definitions, the wrong notions of what science is, what physics is, you end up with this saying everything is religion. Everything is what? Opinion. Everything is just belief. No, there's objective explanations and there's belief. Belief and opinion, religion. Objective explanations, that's the realm of science. We limit it right there, okay? Make it crisp, make it so that people suffer and don't like it, and you destroy their religion because they have this feeling that, everything is just opinion and I'm just going to believe in what I want to believe and that's it. It's got nothing to do with that. You can believe in whatever you want. That part is religion. You want to do science, you better explain something objectively, meaning you're going to have to use your brain. That's where science vibrates. But to say that you believe that the government should be like this, that art is lousy, or that girl is beautiful, or whatever, that's opinion. It's got nothing to do with objective science. Okay, another question, an item fellow raised. He says, your review on where Rope's hypothesis had gotten. Year in review, okay? No results for your search. Viable results of Rope hypothesis. Okay, mocks me, okay? No problem. I like when people mock me because it means I touch a sore point, okay? Here are my answers to that. I'll just let others speak for me. First one's going to be the Bible, okay? And the Bible says, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto understanding. I put that word in there. And few there be that find it. Okay? So, yeah, science is for very few. It's sort of like a philosopher kings in a certain way. Not everybody will understand how this universe works. Most people will rely on God and spirits and space-time and particles at two places at once, and they're fine with that. They'll go to sleep and they don't think about it anymore. They say, okay, fine, that's what I believe in. And there's very few people who will really zero in and say, hold it, how does this universe really work? What is this universe? What is space? What is matter? And they start asking these crucial questions, and they don't accept this nonsense about space-time and black holes and Big Bang and particles at two places at once and parallel universes and antiparticles that come in from the void and all that nonsense. So they're not satisfied with that, and they look for real answers. And so, yeah, very few find that, okay? So, yeah, don't be surprised if the Rope hypothesis doesn't take off. That's not a point against it. The point against it, if you can find something that is irrational about it, then it would be a point against it. But if you can't find anything irrational about it, then all you have is belief, that you don't like it. Fine. A quote from Alexander Pope, a British poet: damning faint praise, Okay, I love that. I turned that around and paraphrased that, glorifying with bitter sarcasm. So I hope you understand that. Okay, and then the last one also from Alexander Pope, a couple of them. A little learning is a dangerous thing. And another one, for fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Okay, so I'll leave you with those. I hope you read them and understand them. Okay, you have your answer right there. Okay, to your concerns. Okay, here's I think same fellow. Says, make up your own scientific method and your own definitions, combining into an arcane and indecipherable language. Okay, let's see what we say to that. Okay, they're far at the bottom, so give me a second until I get them up there. Okay, questions. Are these questions of science and physics? I mean, here we have explanations of the mechanisms, okay? How does gravity work? The mechanism. What prevents the Earth from flying out of the solar system? You know, are these questions of physics? How does a magnet physically attract another? Is that a question of physics? How does light do the photoelectric effect, the slit experiment, okay, and polarization? What does an H atom look like? I mean, can you explain quantum jump, the origin of electromagnetism with your atom, with the atom that you're visualizing? What is electricity? Are these questions of physics or not? Are these questions of science? Or are these questions of philosophy? So if we answer those questions, is that part of what we have to answer in the scientific method? Okay, because right now we don't have answers to these questions. And then there's this other issue. Let's see if I can put it up here. Okay, these are the foundations of physics. And I've included all these definitions. What's indecipherable about this language? I think this is very straightforward, very easy to understand for babies. I mean, I don't know your level of education, but something, that which has shape. What is so arcane and indecipherable about that? Nothing, that which doesn't have shape. What is indecipherable about that? Distance, separation between two objects. Location, set of distances from one object to all the others. Exists, physical presence, an object that has location. Motion, two or more location. What's indecipherable about this language? And again, you can show how smart you are by giving definitions to these same words, especially the word object, the word exist. I mean, if you have a better definition, come into the ring and defend your definition. Don't be such a coward, okay? Do not fear the punches. You're afraid to get into the ring? Is that what it is? I mean, I don't see any definitions. Just give me a definition of what you think belongs to science. Give me a scientific method. What is the scientific method? Is it just routine, just observing? You know, observing how the birds fly. Well, what did you learn from that? I mean, is observing just gawking science? Is that what science is? Making a prediction, predicting when you were born, is that part of science? Is that the scientific method? Is doing an equation, is that science? Describing something, describing a chair and saying, yeah, it's got one seat, one backrest, and four legs, mathematically perfect. Is that science? No, science is explaining something, otherwise you haven't broken your head. Okay, so this is the issue. Okay, so following says, he says, where have we gotten in understanding the geometry, mathematics of the nature of the universe? Okay, you blow off calling it math magic and art, such as the Fibonacci sequence, golden spiral, or the very basics. Well, what have you explained with math? I mean, is science physics, right? Explanations or not. And again, is how a magnet attracts another. The explanation of this mechanism. Is that part of science, part of physics? Yes or no? Answer that question. Is this part of science? And if I use your Fibonacci sequence or any equation, all I'm doing is describing, how fast it goes, with what force, what speed. I'm just describing. I'm not explaining anything. I need to explain why, what causes one magnet to attract another. And the question is that part of physics or not? This is what you got to answer. Is this part of physics? How a magnet attracts another. Is that physics, yes or no? Black and white kind of question. And, if you say that explanation is, none of this will help you. Math will not help you. Math can only tell you how fast or describe the motion, the behavior mathematically, quantitatively. It cannot tell you the cause, the mechanism. Math cannot do that. Math cannot tell you what light is. Math cannot tell you what a magnetic field is. What physical entity is moving in that region of space. And hopefully there is a physical object, for otherwise you're using black magic. You're saying, well, we do it with concept. We do it with black magic, with voodoo magic. Okay, so yeah, you got to figure out what physical objects are in that invisible region. That's physics. Okay, you got to explain the mechanism. And Paul says, better ways to grow food, better water treatment, magnetic motors that come close to being free energy. Free energy. Energy had better be free because it's a concept. There's no such thing as energy. So energy, like intelligence, like information, all that is free. Love is free. Okay. Improve vortex coils. Vortex is a tornado. It's a concept. No such physical object called vortex. Okay. That increase energy. Increase energy. What is that? What are you increasing? You're increasing and decreasing love concepts. You're increasing, decreasing mass. You're increasing, decreasing force. Those are concepts. You got to explain what causes force to increase or decrease. The strength to increase or decrease. What is the cause? What is the mechanism? That's what you got to identify. But to say that mathematically you've increased energy, you're groping in the dark. Okay? Consumption, better treatment of cancer. What's that got to do with anything? What's that got to do with science? Improved health. These people are not even on the subject matter. They're on tangents. Improved propellers. Technology. The list goes on and on. You have technology, of gadgets, of nonsense that has nothing to do with science. Okay. Again, technology has nothing at all to do with science. Technology is developing gadgets or discovering or inventing gadgets without you necessarily understanding the physical principles. Thomas Alva Edison, he tried one thing after another. He finally got the filament. Did he understand what electricity is? Had no clue whatsoever to the time of his death. Did Tesla understand what electricity is? Well, I'll just quote him. Towards the end of his life, he said, someday, Tesla said this, okay? Someday we'll find out what electricity is. In other words, he was confessing he had no clue what electricity is. He was able to develop his gadgets, his Tesla coil and whatever. Those are gadgets. He doesn't have to understand how they work. He just tries one thing and says, and be smart enough, perceive something and say, oh, I can use this way or that way. And if I put a magnet here, it causes this effect. He can do all that stuff, which is what Faraday did and all these other people. It doesn't mean he understands the principle of what magnetism is or what electricity is. He has no clue about what an atom looks like, what an atom how an atom does its thing. All he knows is that if he puts this thing close to that thing, it has an effect, and he uses that effect to develop some gadget. That's not science. That's just groping in the dark and making money and saying, oh, this is useful for humanity. Nothing to do with science. Science has to do with breaking your head and figuring out how the magician made the magic trick. Then you're a scientist. But to say, I measured how fast the magician pulled the rabbit out of the hat and what force he used and how much energy, That's a description. It's got nothing to do with breaking your head. That's just measuring and saying, okay, here's the equation for that phenomenon. You haven't explained anything. You haven't used your head. Okay, mathematics, you don't use your head. All you're doing is just measuring and calculating and putting equations. And you say, whoa, hold it. These people have to use their head. They have to learn the language. They have to learn the hieroglyphics. That's all they have to do. Once they memorize that and have it in their head, they can describe the next event. They haven't explained anything. No mathematician on earth ever explained any phenomenon. All they have been doing is describing mathematically with equations. That's all they've been doing. There's no explanation of how Mother Nature does her magic tricks, gravity and magnetism, electricity, and so on. Okay? So what does technology have to do with science, with explanations? Absolutely nothing. Okay? So we need to define what science is. Again, these people are not even on the subject matter because they never define what science is. They have never defined what physics is, what philosophy is. And so we have these jack of all trades and these merging of different disciplines, and they say, well, that's philosophy, or that's science. No, please define it crisply so we have a black and white situation. We're all on the same page. We can all understand it because it's objective. Okay, then you're scientific, then you're rational. If you got this mumble jumble mixed in there, blended, merged, and when someone asks you a question, you go on a tangent because you say, well, philosophy allows for it, and science allows for it, and physics allows for it. Then that's how you escape punishment. That's how you preserve your religion, because you're not willing to be crisp on your definition. You can't hold your ground. Okay, so this is the issue. Okay, fellow says, he brings up ancient Chinese secrets, I guess, here. He says the following. He says, more understanding. The ancients had great knowledge in this. Ancients were ignorant people. They were wise as far as how you should behave in society. They call those philosophers. We call them religionists. Okay, they said this is how you should behave in society. This is how the world should be run. Because if you do this, you won't get hurt. Okay, and that's got nothing to do with science. It's got to do only with religion, with opinion, with belief. Did Gautama understand the nature of electricity? Could JC, Jesus Christ, right, explain how a magnet works? I don't see that anywhere in the Bible, or in any of the old books that they left for us, all this knowledge that they had. Would Mo be able to explain what caused his sword to fall to the floor? Right? Gravity? Yeah, these people had no clue whatsoever about science, about physics. All they had were opinions about what we call wisdom, which is, what is wisdom? How to behave in society, how to behave so you won't be punished. That was wise. The wise man say only fools rush in. Well, don't be the fool that rushes in. Be a wise guy and stay out of trouble. All that's recommendation. All that's belief. It's got nothing to do with explaining a phenomenon. Okay. This is what we've done in 10,000 years. Put it over here. Okay, this is what we've had for the last 10,000 years as far as so-called physics is concerned. We've had the ether. What is the ether? Vacuum comprised of particles. Some say that vacuum is particles. Others say the vacuum contains particles. And they leave it up to you what vacuum means. Okay, waving of the ether, that's ether particles. That's what light is, supposedly, in the minds of many people out there. What is space? Well, it's infinite, stretches forever. That's what space is. Space is a synonym of infinity, whatever that is. It means, infinity is a word of mathematics. It means that you can count forever if you live that long. Creation, we had a beginning, but do we have eternity? Well, today they say that eternity is oblivion. When you die, you're eternal now. I think it was who was it? Lincoln's war minister, Edwin Stanton, says, now he belongs to the angels, to eternity, or something along those lines. Yeah, we're all eternal when we die. Okay, and that's what science has, relativity has concluded, that the universe doesn't go into these intermittent cycles, oscillating universes, which would be eternity in itself. No, now it's oblivion. And oblivion, what is oblivion? It means that the universe just continues expanding until it dissolves completely, and that's eternity. Because now you have the death of the universe, whatever you want to call it, annihilation, and now you have eternity. So no matter how you look at it, they always talk about eternity in one way or another. And that's called oblivion. Souls don't die, but they go to a better life. You know, they go to space-time, or they go to a parallel universe. Who knows? Fifth dimension. Man will live forever because God made him in his image. Relativists believe that. All mathematical physicists believe that. They say that man will live forever. Why? Because we're going to invent all these robots, and we're going to go to another planet, and from there we're going to hop to another star system, and then we're going to conquer the galaxy and finally the universe. That's pretty much forever, right? No. Maybe this is our last year. So we got a little difference of opinion there, okay? Earth is the center of the universe. Why? Because the universe requires an observer, and we are it. Yeah. So yeah, we have, this is what we concluded after all these years of doing so-called physics and philosophy. Okay. Well, says what? Says you should go start a church. I have. I do have a church, okay? I do have a church, and it's known as the Bill Gates School of Physics. Our motto is, we teach with a baseball bat, okay? Some call it the School of Hard Knocks. Yeah, I do have a church, so welcome. You're welcome to join our church, okay? Okay, one fellow says the following. It says, talks about the Svalbard, Norway, the Earth's Doomsday Seed Vault. You know, they have this place on this island, and they have all the seeds from different parts of the world. They're trying to preserve them for posterity. Again, this notion that we're going to live forever. Okay, so we want to preserve all these seeds forever for the future generations. Okay. And he said he mentions, he references this site. Says, if humanity can't survive, we will need new plant varieties. This is the way many people think. They contradict themselves without realizing it, because if humanity can't survive, who will be there to exist? Okay, to find new varieties. And he's right about that. I mean, if we're not going to survive, what's the point of preserving all these seeds? Okay? And he says, if humanity can survive, that's it. All done. Nobody will survive, and nobody will use the seed vault. Really, nobody. Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, you know, what's the point of preserving seeds if we cannot guarantee our survival? And I'm saying we won't guarantee our survival because all species are born to die. Mother Nature programs the death of a species as soon as she spawns them. So as soon as humans were born, we already were guaranteed that we were going to die one day. Okay, and some die in a background extinction. We will die in a mass extinction because we are the last of the hominins, whichever one you want to use there. We are the last. We have no one to mate with and enrich our genes. We're the last of our species. A long line of, long dynasty comes from monkeys way back when. And so, yeah, and I think we're also, with us, you know, we're going to be the last of the mammals. In other words, all mammals will, or more or less most of them, will come tumbling down with us. I don't think many, if any, will survive, and they won't survive for long anyways. So it's the end of mammals, okay? And we're going to die with all the mammals. Okay, so yeah, I don't see a point of reserving seeds if we're the last of the humans, Okay. And here's another issue. Okay, a fellow says, can you talk about space manifolds? Okay, well, I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to. Could be referring to one of these things here. First one is, let me put it over here. Okay, there's two notions. One is the notion of manifold, space manifold that they have in mathematics, which is a topological space that locally resembles Euclidean space near each point. In other words, if you take, best example maybe, if you're inside a balloon, okay, and the balloon grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, well, the region where you're at becomes flatter and flatter and flatter and flatter as the balloon becomes bigger. And so at some point you treat that as a flat surface, which is Euclidean space. Okay, and that's the notion of, they have these different notions of manifold. What they do is they play around with space. What they've done with that is they extrapolated that to the next notion here, is which they try to use it in a practical way in astronomy and space exploration. So space manifold dynamics arises due to space missions that require new and unusual kinds of orbits, low fuel requirements, low energy orbits, cheap station keeping procedures, and eclipse avoidance strategies. Okay, for this you need this notion of space manifold. Okay, structure of manifolds. This is another article in the solar system. A series of arches spreading from the asteroid belt to Uranus and beyond. The strongest manifolds were found linked to Jupiter, with profound control on small bodies across a wide and previously unknown range of three-body energies. Okay, energies, manifolds, all concepts, abstract concepts. The orbits of these manifolds encountered Jupiter on rapid timescales to transform into collisional or escaping trajectories to reach Neptune's distance merely within a decade. All planets generate similar manifolds across the solar system for fast transport throughout. You have gravitational assist from some planets, so they study that and they say, oh, there's this manifold. This is the way they treat it. The reason for all this nonsense is that they never discovered or invented, whichever one you want to use, they never figured out what gravity is. They don't know what gravity is. They have no clue. So they have to talk about space-time bending, and then they put this in the context of manifold, of a space manifold. Okay, instead of saying what is gravity, how does gravity work, then you can otherwise you're groping in the dark. These people are inventing concepts, unnecessary concepts, simply to get their job done with spacecraft. They say, well, if we send it around Venus, we use the gravitational assist of Venus, and that one will send the probe or whatever to Mars. Great. And they say, well, that's the space manifold around Venus. And they deal with these concepts which they measure and they can put in mathematical terms because they can use it for their space projects. It's got nothing to do with understanding the mechanism of gravity that Mother Nature uses, or Father Universe, or whoever out there. Which is understanding gravity. Once you understand gravity, then you don't need the space manifold and the space-time and all this other nonsense invented by relativity. You say, okay, what is the cause of gravity? What is the physical mechanism, the invisible, intangible physical mechanism that underlies gravity? Once you figure that out, it's simple. Then you say, okay, we send it here. Gravity will do this because this is the physical mechanism that will be in touch with my probe, with my rocket, or whatever you send out there. That's the issue. And because of this nonsense called space manifold, they ended up with concepts. Here, I'll just give you an example, okay, which is the Alcubierre drive, warp drive, okay? And here you see it, okay? Let me get rid of this one. Got rid of the wrong one. Let me get it, the right one out there. Okay, here's the Alcubierre drive, okay? And what is this? They say that the spacecraft will push against space-time, against this, this manifold, that they think is out there. So they treat space as a physical object, and they say, well, if space-time is real, we're going to make that assumption, and space-time is a physical object. What we do is we have the rocket push against space-time, and then it can move even faster than light under certain equations. So what they do is they treat it mathematically, and they forget about physics completely, because they're pushing against the concept. The concept is known as nothing. They're pushing against nothing, and they think that they're in this warp bubble, because they're pushing against space-time. They're warping time. Okay, and they have no problem with all this. They do all these calculations. They get Nobel Prizes for this nonsense. What they're doing, they're pushing against nothing. They're pushing against the concept, and they say, hey, that's interesting. That's an interesting concept. What's that got to do with anything? What's it got to do with physics? That's just math thrown at nonsense, a total nonsense. To say the spacecraft is going to be pushing against space-time when space-time is nothing. It's a concept. They're pushing against love. They're pushing against data, against information. That's what they're pushing against. They say, oh, if we push against information, we can go faster than light. What sense does that make? What sense does it say that you're pushing against space-time? What is space-time? Space-time is a concept. Unimaginable, four-dimensional concept. Four-dimensional, no, four-number-lined. Because there are no dimensions in mathematics. There are only number lines in there. Okay, with that, we'll see you on Sunday, and we'll continue with the Noble series. Nobles, okay? We'll see you then. See you on Sunday. Bye-bye.